financial literacy in this country and around the world really is terrible, particularly among business owners and even more so among women in business. And I was, I guess, kind of feeling a bit deflated at the number of women who had come to me because they had a problem. They owed money to the tax office. They were, working 50-hour weeks and they weren't paying themselves. There was no super going into their accounts. And so I thought, this is what I need to do. I need to try and educate more people.
Hi, I'm Beth Beesky, the founder of More Time to Design and your host of the Design Dialogues podcast. I've been a designer for the last 12 years and I've run my own studio for 5. And I know how hard it is to run a successful business. You not only need to be great at designing, but you need to be great at all the other things as well. I created More Time to Design, a software platform to help designers run efficient studios, and I've created the Design Dialogue podcast to help us all learn together. Each week, we will meet professionals who are at the top of their game doing things that help us run our studios. We'll have conversations with social media managers, interior design mentors, copywriters, stylists, photographers, suppliers, and also designers who have been in the game for a long time and who have such a wealth of knowledge to share. I hope that each week you feel inspired and informed at the end of each of our design dialogues. So join me for the Design Dialogue podcast. Welcome to episode 26 of the Design Dialogues podcast. This week I am talking with Justine McLean from the Flossy Files. I really enjoyed this dialogue with Justine and I think it is a timely discussion for the start of the year. Justine is passionate about financial literacy for business owners, and I think the start of the year is always a good time to review your numbers and see how well your financial systems are set up. Just like the business processes that I feel so passionate about and why I started More Time to Design, all these systems are so important to get right, to make sure that your business is profitable and most importantly, sustainable. We talk about some of the financial foundations that business owners should have and also why it is all so important to have a financial forecast in your business. As always, if you are enjoying the podcast, I would love for you to leave a review. Reviews are one of the best ways for people to find the podcast. If you are unsure of how to leave a review, I will put in the show notes some simple instructions to follow. I really do appreciate you taking the time to leave a review. I hope you enjoy my dialogue with Justine. Would you like to do things a little differently in 2024? Have your business organized and streamlined and feel like you are in control of your business, not that it is in control of you. I would love for you to take the time to book in a demonstration or start a trial of More Time to Design. MTTD is a cloud-based studio and project management platform that allows you to run all the elements of your design business in one place. Time tracking, calendar management, to-do list, client schedules, QR codes for all your builder schedules. Keep track of your inquiries and lead management. Keep track of the financials of each project so that you know you are always making money, and so much more. Follow the link in our show notes to start your free 30-day trial or book in a demonstration so the team can show you how you can organize your day, your desk, and your studio with More Time to Design today. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Design Dialogues. This week I am joined by Justine McLean from Flossy Creative. Hi Justine.
Hi, how are you, Beth? Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Thanks for joining us. So I love to start each episode by finding out what you can see out your window today.
So out my window, I can see the bush. I am about 150 meters from the bush. I'm about, 2 Ks from the beach. And but it's very windy out there today. So I'm seeing very big swaying gum trees right now. And it's really hot here. So I don't know what it's like for everyone else, but that's what it's like down on the south coast in New South Wales.
Oh, sounds picturesque, but yes, today is a bit of a scorcher. So
yeah, for sure.
So I would love to hear about your business and where you've gotten to today. You have quite a varied background, like it's quite a meandering path to where you are today. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I like to say that I've got a bit of an eclectic business back because honestly, my first job was in publishing. So I started in publishing when I was very young. And but when I had my, first son back in 1994, which seems like a really long time ago now, I didn't, necessarily want to work full time. But back then, I don't. Well, there really wasn't such a thing as a freelancer.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't work from home. I was a commissioning editor in a big publishing company, tax publishing, interestingly enough. And when I was on mat leave, one of my first babies, which was a book on tax, very interesting stuff.
Real page turner.
Yes, real page turner was, in the works. We did this book every year, and the authors wouldn't work without me on their team. So I was enough to actually become a freelancer. I had to resign, but I could become a freelancer. Now, obviously, it's very common. Then, in 2002, I had 4 children. My fourth son had just been born late the year before. My husband and I, for reasons that still, I decided to open toy stores, a couple of toy stores. We were early adopters of e-commerce. And so we kind of did that for a long time. But there was always this calling to come back and do these freelance jobs for me, whether it was writing, whether it was going into one of the big magazines, Better Homes and Gardens, Home Beautiful, New Idea Food, and do little jobs for them. And so I always sort of had my hand in that publishing. And what I found were people, were fascinated about this whole idea of working for yourself, whether it was having the big retail store or whether it was this side hustle that I had of doing these jobs. And so I would get asked lots and lots of questions. How do I set up my business? I don't know how to get paid. My pricing doesn't seem to be right. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to start a business blog on this. And of course, when I was doing retail, that business started with my husband. And so he and I, as you do, we divided the jobs and I ended up with the finance.
Yeah.
Now, for someone who wasn't that great at maths at school, I wasn't too thrilled with that, but I pretty quickly realized that I needed to be on my game when it came to business finances, because our accountant actually completely buggered up our tax one year, and we were left with a $42,000 debt. And we just didn't have 42 grand sitting around, waiting to kind of pay the LTO. And I thought, I never want that to happen again. So in conjunction with everything else I was doing, I actually decided to get qualified, do an accounting course, become a qualified BAS agent. That was 1,000 hours of supervised BAS preparation with an insolvency firm. And it's boring as it sounds. But, all of that sort of combined, and of course, lots of people asking me all the time about how do I start a business? I thought, you know what, I am actually going to branch out and start another side hustle, and I'm going to do bookkeeping and BAS compliance for people, and I'm also going to be an advisor. And so that started in 2016. When we got to COVID, that ramped up. It kind of went off the scale because people just needed that sort of information back then. And earlier this year, I actually sold off that one arm of my business, which is the bookkeeping and BAS compliance part of my business. So if anyone ever says to you, you can't be a multi-passionate business, because my company had, BAS services and bookkeeping, that financial education, there was writing at one point. Don't listen to them ever. You can, whatever you like. And so that's what brings me to today in 2023. Once I sold off that big part of my business, I very much decided to focus on that financial education, because financial literacy in this country and around the world really is terrible, particularly among business owners, and even more so among women in business. And I was, I guess, kind of feeling a bit deflated at the number of women who had come to me because they had a problem. They owed money to the tax office. They were, working 50-hour weeks and they weren't paying themselves. There was no super going into their accounts. And so I thought, this is what I need to do. I need to try and educate more people. So created a course, Business Money Formula, and I do lots of one-to-one and group education with all sorts of business owners, lots of designers.
That's awesome. Wow, that really is quite the eclectic path, a combination of skills and all of that kind of stuff. So one question that I would love to just touch on, just because it is such an amazing kind of combination of things you've done, but also because you've done it while you've been a mum of 4 kids. How do you manage all of the hats?
It's a good question. And I think it's one of those things that, as women, as mothers, you kind of just get on with. I mean, when I started my first business, my purpose was then, and it still really is now, even though my youngest is 22 and my eldest is now 29, it still is very much about family for me, and just being able to work for myself and having that ability to swap and change as I needed to be able to look after the kids, to get them to their sport, to help them do their homework. And so for me, my business has always been very much by design. So I've tried as much as I can, although it's sometimes it can be an impossible task, to have a business that sort of fits into my lifestyle rather than having my lifestyle try and fit into my business. And there's that saying, I stopped working 9 to 5, started my own business, and now I work, 24/7, 365. And it's kind of true, right? Because we're thinking always about our business. But I think the thing is, you have to set your parameters. And I think you also have to realize that you can be good at everything. You can run an absolutely kick-ass business. You can make lots of money. You can do that while raising your kids, but you might not necessarily be able to do all the things at once.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about the season of life and business that you're in. And it's really important to have a business that is profitable and sustainable. So one that makes you money, that pays you a wage, that pays you super, but that also fits into that lifestyle. So for me, and this is what I talk to everybody about, it's all about really understanding what success means to you right now. Because so many of us start a business and we look at everybody else. We're thinking, oh, but, that person's doing this and they're doing that. And we don't stop to think about, well, they might have been in business longer than us, or maybe they've got a big team behind them. Or maybe it's not as pretty as it seems when it comes down to profit. So that money that's left over, that's unencumbered after you've paid for everything. And I think it's a really important distinction. I think it's about really setting yourself up for success that means something to you, that is going to fit in with your family or your life the way you want to design it, and sorting everything else out around that. I'm also big at batching tasks. I think that's been super important for me, for sure. And there's no question that sometimes you'll have to pull an all-nighter, especially when you've got kids, but you don't want to be doing that all the time.
Yeah. No, I think that's I really love that concept of like building the business to work in with your life, but also defining what is your success. So, what success means for me is most probably very different from what success means for the next person, kind of thing. So I think that's a really key point for anyone who's kind of thinking about a business or struggling in a business and, is also trying to wear a lot of hats. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you have to always go back to, why did you start? What made you kind of take that leap? Because it is a big leap to start a business. And so when things don't seem to be going that well, go back to that. Go back to why you started and then work backwards from there.
Yeah, I know. It's funny you said that. Like, I've had a real mind shift just actually in the last few weeks, because the main reason why I started my business was because I wanted to be able to pick up the kids from school and be there for them and all that kind of stuff. And then my son decided that he wanted to do an extra session of cricket next term, which means I've got to pick him up from school a bit earlier one day. And I was really cranky. Like, I was really glad that he wanted to do it, but I was cranky as well, because I was like, oh, that, like, it's a couple of extra hours of work I'm going to miss out on. And then I was like, this is the whole reason why I started, because I wanted to be able to do this for him, kind of thing. So yeah, it's sometimes you do just need to kind of reset thinking a little bit and remember why you started.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also, you know, just to your point there, because I know exactly what you're saying. My two eldest kids were elite athletes. So we were going to, you know, sometimes I think back and I think, how did I actually get them to all their trainings? I don't even know. But I think the thing to always remember is that it's okay to ask for help. And that was something that I wish I had done sooner.
Yeah.
So sure, it's about, you know, as I said, thinking, and as you've had that epiphany, thinking about why did you start, but then remembering that it's okay to ask for help too.
Yeah. I'll definitely be the mum on the phone pacing around the oval. So something that I hear way too often from particularly women in business is, oh, I'm not good with the numbers. Oh, it's not my thing. I'm a creative. And I always feel very nervous when I hear that, because I'm just like, that's what being a business owner is. You can't put your head in the sand. And you talk a lot about the financial foundations and how important it is for business owners to understand their numbers. What are some of the things you would advise to people who kind of don't even know where to start? Like, when you say, what are your numbers? They're like, I don't know. I've got no idea. Where should people start?
Yeah, good question. It's more common than you think. I think most people who have that creative bent, or most people, to be fair, who go into business, ever go into business thinking, wow, I cannot wait to get my head around the numbers, the finances. I think for a lot of us, it's definitely not the sexy part of business. You know, that's the branding and the website and the marketing and the social media and whatever it is we're selling, all that sort of stuff. And in conjunction with that, then comes this story that you tell yourself. It's that the psychology that you have around money, which is often a learned behavior, something that we were, confronted with, or that we kind of just happened around us when we were young. And so all of us have a money story. And for a lot of people, that money story is, I'm not good at money. It could be because your maths teacher told you that you were bad at maths. It could be because your accountant laughed at you when you wanted to start your business. But my thing is, you know, you don't have to be good at the finances to run a business. You just have to be prepared to understand the numbers. Take some time and get that financial education, because honestly, if the finances is something that don't light you up, or that you're genuinely not good at, and there are some people who, you know, have issues that, you know, learning issues that mean they're genuinely not good at doing the numbers. Great creatives, but just not numbers people. Even if you choose to abdicate the responsibility, or I shouldn't say abdicate the responsibility, but outsource that work, don't abdicate the responsibility completely. I think you need to have that basic understanding of the finances. So the first thing to do is stop telling yourself that you're no good at the numbers. You need to reframe that story in your head. Could be, well, I might not be great at numbers, but I'm going to get the help that I need to be good at this, or good enough at this to be able to understand what is happening within my business. Because the truth is, unless you get those basics right, unless you have things like a bank account that's just for business, either, you know, a cloud accounting system, for example, or, your program, more time to design, or some systems and processes set up from the beginning, then you're kind of setting yourself up to fail. The number of times I've heard, oh, well, I just write things down on a piece of paper because this is my first year in business, or because I'm not making enough money to justify worrying about the finances. I'm like, no, take it seriously from the beginning. Start as you mean to continue. Get that basic knowledge of the finances in your business. So, and all those good money habits that you need to have in your business. And then if you still need to outsource, do that. I always say to people, build in a regular time to work on your finances. I always say it's a Money Monday, a Finance Friday. If you can think of an alliteration for another, use that. But use that time. It only needs to be an hour to really focus on the finance. So it could be things like getting your invoicing out the door. The number of designers who I work with who just forget to invoice and then wonder why they've got no money, it never ceases to amaze me. But you can pay your bills, you can have a look at your bank account, or you can reconcile your cloud accounting. You could talk to your finance partners, your bookkeeper, your accountant, find out how the business is going, have some numbers that you need to review. So that could be the cash in the bank, or the, your pricing. Is your pricing stacking up? Are you so busy that you can't keep up? Maybe that means your pricing is too cheap. And then I think the other thing to do is to, set some financial goals from the beginning. So apart from the money story and getting all those basics right, it's really the focus comes down to setting a goal. And a lot of people automatically think it needs to be a dollar goal. It could be a dollar goal, but it doesn't need to be. A financial goal could be as simple as just making a commitment to use your business bank account for your business only. It could be setting up some systems and processes that are going to help you invoice faster, make it easier for people to pay you. It could be that, you're going to get a pricing review done before the end of the quarter, for example. But it's about really, those three things, I think.
One of the other things that I think small business owners, particularly women, particularly when they're starting out, don't think about is paying themselves super. And I think that is such, there's so many statistics that are absolutely horrifying about the disparities between super levels and all of that kind of stuff. Do you think that people should pay super to themselves from day one?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you should set up your business so that every time you take on a client, that price, the quote that you send out is going to cover what it costs you to run your business, the number of hours that you're obviously going to put into the project, which doesn't just include the hours that you're doing. It also includes thinking time and faffing about time. And I always like to add 10% for that. But it also includes what your salary would be for that time. And that's, so that's understanding how many hours it's going to take you to complete a project. So you might charge out at 150, 275 an hour, but you might not necessarily, and you probably won't be, taking that as your salary. You might be happy to take $30 as your salary, and then you'll be adding 11.5% in super to that. So I think, it's about every single project from the beginning needs to be set up in that way so that you are doing all of those things, paying the business to run, paying yourself wages and super, paying your staff if you have them, and building in a profit number. I think if you do that from the beginning, then you're always going to pay super. I think you're right. So many women just think, whatever's left, because I'm a sole trader, that's my pay. But quite often, whatever's left isn't really enough to cover the cost of business because we haven't kept a great eye on that. It's not enough to pay a wage because we just haven't set ourselves up to pay ourselves a wage. So, for me, there's probably zero chance that you're going to be earning the corporate salary right off the bat. Even if you set yourself up to earn the minimum wage plus super from the beginning, then that's better than just doing nothing or being a year in or 20 years in. I had a client a couple of years ago who was 20 years into the interior design business and still not paying herself a wage. just keeping whatever was left and hoping that was enough to contribute to the household. I think, it's key to do it from the start.
Yeah. And I mean, that's such an important part, because I know a lot of designers that might be in like year 6, year 7 of their business. So they're not in that startup phase, and they've got great projects, like, really some amazing projects, but they're still not paying themselves regular money. It's a shambles kind of thing, and they don't know the numbers. So they don't really know, they just don't know the numbers.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is they start getting really burnt out, because they're like, I'm doing all this work and I'm not getting paid. Like, I've got no financial freedom at all, because I'm like this slave to this business. And it's this resentful kind of, like, it's a really kind of dangerous mindset to get into. So I think having that, where you've set it up from the start, where I'm getting paid, it might not be a lot, but I am getting paid, is actually just, even aside from the financial thing, is such an important thing for the mindset of a long-term successful business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And confidence and mindset are things that you can't underestimate. I always say pricing is my superpower, because, give me 90 minutes and I'll give you perfect pricing for your business. And, I've got my course. I created a course at the start of this year when I sold my business, the business money formula, where I kind of go through all of those basics, and I leave that pricing formula until the very end, because I want people to get through it, because it's kind of the secret sauce in the course. And, part of the thing that I have discovered over many years as a business owner is, if you get that pricing right from the beginning, so that you are paying yourself not just for the hours that you're face to face with a client, but for all those other hours that we all know go into running a business, then chances are that when, the time comes and you're hating on your business, because there will come that time, at least on Thursday, you're going to get paid. And you kind of feel good about that. And so I think that's again why it's just so important to get things in place from the very beginning.
Yeah. So many great things in that. You recently talked about on your own podcast the concept of lumpy income, which I think is so relevant to interior designers. We have so many factors that go into when we can invoice, how we have our invoicing set up. It's quite often related to project stages. And so a lot of designers would have feast and famine periods in their business, which can be really hard to manage. And it can be really disheartening as well if you're in a famine stage. What are some of the things you would tell people to help manage those kind of feast and famine and a more lumpy income stream?
Well, believe it or not, it's not just designers. Even my business is a bit of feast or famine, because I've changed my business model this year. So it's very much about, okay, launch a course, get the money in, yay, sort of feast. And then I've got a lot of regular monthly clients, but, it's not the same as it was when I had my bookkeeping business. So I suppose you could say there's that bit of famine there. And I think, there are so many of us who go through that. And so the first thing I would say, and, this goes back to me being, boring again, talking about the financial foundations, but financial foundations are so important. So I think it's about putting in those strong financial foundations, putting in all those good money habits, and systems and processes, like just having a bank account, that's only for business, invoicing regularly. The number of people who don't send out an invoice when it's due absolutely kills me. It's about reviewing your numbers often. So, what are those financial goals that you've set up, and really looking at those and keeping an eye on them. And then, of course, understanding your pricing. But more importantly, I think, the next piece of the puzzle comes down to cash flow. And by cash flow, I mean, the cash flow is all the money that's coming in and all the money that's going out. And for anyone listening, you've probably heard of a cash flow forecast. This could be something that your accountant offers, but let me tell you, it's so easy to do. If you go on to, I think it's business.gov.au, they'll have a template there. You can download that. You can make a spreadsheet for yourself if you want to. But what it is, it's really understanding when your money is coming in and what is going out. And even if when the money is coming in is a bit of a guesstimate, which it often is for a lot of business owners, you can pretty much pinpoint the money that's going out and when that money is going to go out. So whether that's for subscriptions, wages, staff costs, just generally if you're buying furniture as a designer, it could be, the furniture around projects, would just average that out over a year. It's about knowing what's going out and when, how much tax you've got to pay, when you've got to pay that tax. And then it's having a look and saying, okay, in January, February, I've got a lot of money going out, but I know that this in the design industry, people won't be doing much over probably December, January, February. So things are going to be pretty quiet, but I've still got all of my stuff to pay, all of my subscriptions, wages, and so I've got a tax bill that I'm going to have to stump up for at the end of February. So, it's understanding that to cover those costs, you're going to need to save at some point. So when all the money is coming in, when you're in that feast, portion of your business, it's about not going crazy and thinking you can spend all the money, but being able to look ahead at the cash flow and say, okay, to get me through these months, I need to save. So setting up some sort of cash flow document forecast, really important. Then I'm a big believer in a contingency plan, saving for a rainy day. If we learned nothing from COVID, it's how important that contingency plan is, because the businesses that have put away 3 to 6 months of savings, so all the things that they would have to pay to keep their business running, to keep them paying themselves a wage, to keep paying themselves super, they were the businesses that came through the other side unscathed. A lot of those small businesses were not eligible for any of the help from the government. So that savings got them through to the other side. And when I say this to business owners, they say, are you kidding me? I'm barely making ends meet. How can I save 3 to 6 months worth of business costs? And my answer is to just start. Even if it's $20 a week, just start. So that's another big factor in navigating that lumpy income. Then there's things like diversifying your income. Are there other income streams that you can add to your business that aren't going to take up a lot of your time, that might just be a quick win when it comes to money? It could be having a quick masterclass, a design masterclass with some of your existing customers. It could be mentoring another designer. It could be working in collaboration with another business owner to present something. It could be getting paid to speak at a conference. There are so many different opportunities. So think about how can you diversify your income so that when one income stream dries up or isn't doing very well, you've got another income stream that's kind of still firing away for you. Then the next thing is to, be mindful of your customers. So many of us don't think about this. We expect that if we work with someone once and they've loved the job that we've done for them, that next time they need a design job done or whatever that job is, they're going to come back to us.
Yeah.
Just like entrepreneurs who have that kind of shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
A lot of our customers have that too, because there's always the next best thing, the new trend. That designer over there that my friend Sally worked with that I used because she used her. So my tip here is don't let your customers forget about you.
Yeah.
If you have a mailing list, start a mailing list. Be in touch with them regularly. Tell them what's happening in your business. Share with them what the spring trends are. Suggest that you could do a quick makeover of the lounge room as something that could be a quick win for your business and a quick win for them. So about that. I think there was a guy called Frederick Reichheld from Bain and Co. And he did a study that showed that if you increase your customer retention by 5%, so keep just 5% of the customers that you've worked with in the past, you can often increase your profit by 25%.
Oh, wow.
More expensive to get new customers into your business than it is to just keep working with the people that you've worked with in the past.
Yeah.
And then, the other thing is, don't wait to get help. If you are in crisis mode, if you're in famine mode and you don't know how to get out of it, ask for help. Talk to your accountant, talk to your bookkeeper, reach out to one of the hotlines you can talk to. Use the services of a business coach or a money mentor like me. Think about getting help, but do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
One that I would say that gets a lot of people in trouble, particularly in business, is that everyone wants to scale. Everyone wants this big, big business. It's okay to have a small, boring business, by the way, but just scale with caution, because if you're in a lumpy income business and you haven't set up all of those other things, when you start to scale and go, grow a bigger business, then you just put a magnifying glass on the things that aren't working.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. All of that was so great. But I think that point about scaling is so important, because I think so many people start a business and they think, oh, it's going to be so great. We're going to have 3 or 4 employees and all this kind of stuff. And it's actually the stress that brings, especially when it's a kind of business that doesn't have, like a retail store which might have money coming in every single day, something that is a bit more service-based, that is, a bit more irregular in its income coming in. That can be a very big stress to manage the extra additional costs that come with a team. And it's not just wages. There's so much more.
Yeah, I think there's something like only 7% of businesses in Australia reach turnover more than $2 million. And I was speaking the other day to a lady by the name of Jenny Stillwell, who has written a book about this. And I said to her, I'm fascinated. Why is that the case? What have you discovered? Why don't people exceed that turnover? And her answer astounded me, because it's the same thing that will stop you from reaching, $200,000, not just 2 million. And that is, that you don't have good financial foundations, you don't have great systems and processes in place, and you don't manage your staff well. And so they're the 3 things that stop people, growing, scaling a business. But as I said, it's the same problem that I see when a business is trying to reach 200,000 or $500,000. Yeah. And I add to that, the 4th thing for me is that they don't look after their customers.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff, and pretty simple, foundations for starting a business, really.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting, because I think people think more staff equals more income or larger profit or whatever. And quite often you can be earning, your profit can be the same as when you are a 1-person design studio versus when you're a 5-person design studio. So your income might be greater, but that percentage of profit and what's left at the end of the day and what you're able to pay yourself could be the same, maybe less, but you've got a whole heap more stress because you're managing people. So I think that's really interesting. And I don't think it's something that people think about a lot. And, we don't design school, we don't get taught very many business skills. And so I think it's something that catches people by surprise.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And I think, you can't underestimate how tricky a business becomes when you add staff to the business, because you are dealing with not only all the legislation and the, I's that you have to dot and the T's that you have to cross when it comes to staff, but then you're dealing with people. And, often as business owners, we keep everything in our head. write down the things that need to be done. We just sort of have an expectation that we're going to hire someone and they're going to pick it up and they're going to run with it and they're going to be so amazing. That's where good systems and processes come in place, into place. Good training, is really important. And then honestly, things still might not work out because, people are people, and it's a very different workforce now than it was even 5 years ago in terms of the expectations that people have. And I think what you said about profit is very true. So I think the important thing is to always come back to that, success definition. What does it mean to you? Because sure, you might not be turning over 200,000 or 500,000 in your business. Maybe you're turning over 150,000, but maybe you're doing it with just you. And, the bulk of that is paying yourself a wage because you're running a really lean business. And I know what I'd rather have.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think it's really amazing the number of people who kind of do a full circle on this, and they're kind of like, they might, like myself, where I got to learn the joy of leading other people while I was working for other people, or other people who do it through their own business. And it's amazing the number of people who circle back and go, a really lean business by myself is just really looking great at the moment, kind of thing. Like I think it's something that not enough people really think about when they start a business. And I think when people think about scaling, they also most probably don't realize that at some point you're most probably going to go from doing a lot less creative work and becoming a lot more of a people manager. And that is a very different skill set.
Yeah. And I think that happens the minute that you take on team. Like you, I've kind of, done that full circle moment myself. My whole team went with the sale of the business back in February. So I'm kind of starting again. And I'm, it's very much now, okay, what does this kind of season of my life look like? Do I have the willingness, I guess, to work with a whole bunch of other people? Is that what I want to do, or do I want to keep things deliberately quite small and just have freelancers here and there, which is really what I've got now. So I think it's about that. And I think it's there will be some people listening who think, no, I want the design studio, I actually want to do less designing. I'm that people management, because the prize at the end for me is the bigger business, the more money, the bigger team. But then it comes down to understanding your role as that CEO, being able to let go of all that stuff, because you've got all those great systems and processes in place and those foundations in place, and understand that your role now needs to be people management, unless you've got someone to do that for you, and visibility, so that you can sell, so that you can still have a profitable business.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I could talk about this for so long, because I think it's something that designers, I just don't think that many designers think about it when they start a business and they're like, I'm going to grow. And I'm like, have a think about that before you go down that path. One thing that you touched on right at the beginning was about how even if you don't feel you're very good at numbers and you want to outsource it, you've got to be across it to understand. Something that I think I've kind of struggled with in my own business when I have thought about possibly outsourcing bookkeeping and accounting services is almost not really knowing the right questions to be asking to work out if those people are the right people for my business. And I think that's really important, because these people are going to know the intimate financial details of your business, which can be really daunting to hand over. What are some of the things and some of the questions you should be asking and thinking about when you are looking at taking on a bookkeeper and an accountant, I suppose, kind of in that interview process for them?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the first thing to do, it's like anyone, it's the same as if you want to take on a business coach or you're thinking about taking on a new staff member, right? You would ask them some questions, what's their experience? How can they help you? All of those really, basic sort of things that you would ask anyone. But I think when you would start to look, because that is often the impediment for people, they know they want a good accountant, they know they want a bookkeeper to help them, but they don't know where to look. And, there are bookkeepers and there are bookkeepers and there are accountants and there are accountants, right? And you might, need a BAS agent because your business might be quite large. You might not want to spend the money on an accountant. So you might want to, choose a BAS agent, which sort of sits in the middle of an accountant and a bookkeeper. So there are options when it comes to getting those people to help with the financial side of your business. And I think the first thing that you want to do is ask around, because people are going to tell you that, if they have a good bookkeeper, good accountant, good BAS agent. My business was literally built on referral when I had that compliance business. So people would tell other people that they liked working with me, and then, they would, maybe not come into my business as a client. So I think ask around, find out who people are recommending, and then book discovery calls with them and really conduct it like an interview. I think so many people feel intimidated by their financial partners, particularly their accountants. The number of people that I've heard say, oh, I'm going to stay with my accountant, even though I know they don't do a good job. I know I'm being overcharged, but, I've been with them for 10 years, or it was my mum's accountant, or it was my auntie's best friend, and the other thing there is that, when you are working with these people, it's not a dictatorship. So first of all, you don't have to stay with someone that you don't like. If that person in that interview process, in that discovery call, you need to be very clear about, what your business is about, what your purpose is for that business. I want to make $1 million. I want to turn over, 500,000. I want my profit to run at 25%. I need someone to help me get there, and then see what they say. I've heard terrible stories about accountants who have more or less patted, these designers on the head and told them that it's just a hobby business and not to worry about it, that have treated the women who are running these businesses, as fools, really. But for whatever reason, they choose to stay with that person to prove them wrong. Like one of my clients is in exactly that boat right now. So, book a discovery call, ask questions, share what your purpose is, and ask that accountant, bookkeeper, BAS agent, how can they help you to achieve your financial goal? What are they going to do to help you? So it could be a monthly meeting, a quarterly meeting to just go over your numbers. It could be that, that person's on speed dial, so that if you've got an issue that you need to ask a question of, you can ring them, and that's okay. That's the relationship I have with my accountant. He knows, what I want to do with my business. We're on the same page. I can ring him at any time and he is happy to give me advice. He doesn't charge me for that advice. He simply wraps it all up in the fee that I pay him at the end of financial year to do my tax. So all that sort of stuff. A lot of accountants are going to help with top line stuff only. By top line stuff, I mean it's kind of that big picture, wishy-washy. Their job is to get you the best tax return, and that's all they're going to do for you. Whereas a BAS agent, a bookkeeper, will have a more intimate knowledge of your business, that day to day. I'll be saying to you things like, well, you really can't claim this, or did you know you could claim that? And so that's important too when you sort of.
So one thing that I think would be really great to do right now is, can you give us a different definition of a bookkeeper and a definition of a BAS agent and a definition of an accountant? Because I think quite often these terms get thrown around and it's like, well, what exactly does a bookkeeper do?
Yeah. So basically all three of those roles, you need to be qualified. You need to have gone to TAFE University and have the relevant qualifications. BAS agents and accountants are required to be registered with a board called the Tax Practitioners Board. To be registered with that board, you need to have the proper qualifications. You need to be a good and proper person. You need to have appropriate insurances, and you need to be a member of an institution. I was going to say a club, but that's not what I mean. So I am a member of the IPA, the Practicing Accountants. So, and to do that, you will have to go through an interview process to be part of that association. So there's all those sorts of, dots that need, I's that need to be dotted, T's that need to be crossed to get registered. So you need to be registered. Bookkeepers, there's less I suppose, registration qualification around them in terms of what they need to do to be a bookkeeper. So they have a much more basic entry level qualification, not as much experience, and they don't necessarily have to be registered. They can get registered and do all of those things, but a lot of them won't bother. So bookkeepers are more like the day-to-day, doing the day-to-day stuff when it comes to your business. So going into your cloud accounting and doing the reconciliation, maybe paying some bills for you, chasing up people who haven't paid you. It's very much that day-to-day. Does this have GST in it? Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. They can pull together all the reports for you and kind of send them to you and keep you up to speed. A BAS agent will have way more experience. They'll come in at a completely different level where they're almost acting like a CFO, your chief financial officer. So they're taking more of a wholesale look at your business, and they're giving you some advisory around, the levers that you can pull in your business to make your business more profitable, to help it grow if that's what that's what your goal is right now. Also, put in a BAS return on your behalf, so they can deal directly with the ATO on your behalf. They're sort of like the middle person between, your business and the ATO, if you like. There's that, and they're often much, cost much less than an accountant. An accountant is the level above. As I said, their job is to really get you that best tax return that they can. And, they also, BAS agents have to keep an eye on the legislation, but not to the same level as an accountant would. So an accountant needs to be across the legislation, know what they can and can't claim, make sure that everything they're doing is correct. And there's also a whole lot of things that BAS agents, for example, aren't allowed to do. So, we can't put in FBT returns, for example. We can't put in a tax return. We don't get access to the tax portal, for example. So they'll have that next level of access and with the ATO, and that next level of expertise when it comes to your business financials.
Yeah. And so you could really have all three of them in as part of your business team. And it might be that you are talking to your bookkeeper every week. You might be talking to your BAS agent once a quarter or a bit more regularly. And then you might only be talking to your accountant once a year.
Correct. Exactly right. Yeah, you've nailed it. So that could be the case. At the very least, I would say to anyone who's a creative business, if you can afford to outsource, I would outsource to a BAS agent over a bookkeeper. Why? Just because it becomes more of a one-stop shop. They can get everything done for you that needs to be done every quarter, and give you a bit of an analysis, a more detailed analysis of your business than you probably get from a bookkeeper. And then bring the accountant in once a year to kind of do the tax. And the truth is that if you have a really good BAS agent that is working with you in your business, then your tax return should cost less because most of the work should be done. So when your file or when your financials go across to your accountant, they should be looking at your financials saying, wow, this is a great job. I don't need to do a lot here. Yeah. And your BAS agent becomes the point of contact for all of the questions. So I would say you definitely need an accountant. Anyone who is out there who is trying to do their tax themselves, I think is a little crazy. I don't do my tax myself. I outsource it to my accountant because I feel that it's his job to kind of have a handle on what's going on to a better and higher level than I would have. So, that's my thought on that. But I think, a BAS agent in particular can be invaluable in your business.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. I think once again, it's this financial literacy, like even knowing where those three people, how they sit in their roles, I think is something that a lot of small business owners most probably weren't aware of, kind of thing. So,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think as well, one of the things that people are like, they might have an accountant, but they're like, oh, I won't ask that question because that's going to be a bill and it's going to be expensive, kind of thing. But if you've got a BAS agent who is maybe not as expensive as an accountant, like, you might feel more comfortable asking them those questions more regularly, which means that everything is going to run more smoothly.
Exactly. And I think the other thing to realize is that if you are a BAS agent or an accountant, there's a whole lot of professional development that you are required to do every year that actually costs money to do this professional development, both because it's time away from clients, but then it physically costs money to attend these conferences and lectures and things. And so there is that expectation from the Tax Practitioners Board that, you know, your agents would have done those things. And so you're just putting yourself in the hands of someone who is qualified and who's really going to look after your business for you.
Yeah, wow.
Testimonials. Make sure you gel with people, ask for testimonials, and make sure you're on the same page. Remember, it's not a dictatorship. So if you're working with someone that you don't like or that you don't feel comfortable with, get rid of them. Find some. Yeah. Simple.
So true. But I do know, I very much know the feeling of the accountant that you want to prove wrong, kind of thing. So yeah,
Don't do that.
That speaks to me.
Don't do that. It's a waste of time, energy. Just go find someone else. And you know what? If you want to switch accountants, it's a bit like switching banks. You know, you don't even, well, actually, it's much simpler than switching banks. Find the new accountant and then ask that accountant to get in touch with your old accountant and get all your stuff.
So you don't even have to break up with them.
You don't even have to break up with them. No. Yeah.
I love it. So we've touched on a lot of things throughout this interview, but kind of in a nutshell, what would be your advice to someone who's opening the front door of their business, you know, tomorrow? What would be kind of the top 3 things that you would say they need to do?
Well, I think that you need to make sure that you're set up in all the areas well from the beginning. So, like I said, start as you mean to continue, be serious about your business because it's great for your mindset and it's good for your business. So, all those foundations, from the finances to the marketing to, you know, your sales to the branding, all of those sorts of things, get it all set up from the get-go really well. Make that decision as you're going in. What does success look like for you in this first year? Don't put the blinkers on then and just go for your definition of success. Go for your goal. Don't be distracted by what everyone else is doing. And then I think the best thing that you can do for your business is to start a list at the very beginning. So start collecting who your clients are, people that follow you. Don't get sucked into this idea that, you know, if you've got 15,000 people on social media, you're winning, because if social media disappears tomorrow, you're not winning. So start your list and nurture them. And I'm going to have a couple more than 3, 2 more for me, if I can, please.
Of course.
Ask for help sooner rather than later, because I think that is really important. And for a lot of people who are going into business, and maybe even now, people who have been in business, whether it's for a month, a year, or 5 years, are going to be thinking, times are tough. How can I get more work? I think don't forget about the customers that you've already had, and, you know, network to get work. It's the best way that I can put it. So, you know, put those feelers out, network with people, network with other business owners to get the work coming in the door. Because if you're not working with clients, then you don't have a business. You might have a hobby that's taking up a lot of your time, but you don't have a business.
Yeah. Oh, no, they're great. Thank you. So what are you looking forward to in your business in the next 12 months?
Well, for me, I'm on a bit of a mission to try and help as many business owners, particularly women in business, really create those profitable and, I guess, you know, sustainable businesses that are speaking to them and their vision. And because financial literacy, in my mind, is such a big, important part of that, I really want to spend my time educating as many business owners as I can. So I'm really looking forward to doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm also writing a book. So that's pretty exciting stuff for the next 12 months.
Oh, wow. Well, I am a big part of my thing is cheering on women to grow businesses that are not just surviving, but absolutely thriving. So, I can't wait to read your book and hear more of your podcast and your content because it's so helpful. So where can our community reach out and find you?
Well, I'm always hanging out on Instagram, so you'll see me at Flossie Files over there. That's Flossie with an I. I'm in a phase of rebranding, so I'm going to rebrand to my own name because it'll just be simpler. You can join the Business Money Formula waitlist. The next course will be opening early next year. And you'll find a link there on my website, which is at flossie.com.au. Again, Flossie with an I. Come and listen to my podcast, Secrets of Successful Business, and let's hang out there too.
Awesome. I will link to all of that in the show notes for everyone. Justine, thank you so much for this. I have learnt so much, and I hope everyone else as well.
Thanks for having me, Beth. It has been amazing talking to you today.
I hope you enjoyed this dialogue with Justine. One of the key things that I took from my dialogue with Justine today was something she mentioned right at the beginning of our chat. It was how her accountants stuffed up their books and they had a huge tax debt. I think this highlights so many of the points that we spoke about why it is important to understand your figures, and not that you necessarily have to be good at the numbers, but that you can't check out of the financials completely. I think this is so important, especially for female business owners, to appreciate and understand the key parts of your financial statements. I loved talking to Justine as well about wearing all of the hats and how making sure that you define what success means to you. What does it look like for your life? And also that what success looks like might change over time. Also that you can have it all. Just maybe not all at the same time. I know for me, one of the biggest reasons I started my business is I wanted to have the flexibility for my family. And my kids are little, so that means that sometimes work takes the back seat, which I won't lie, I can be frustrating because I have big plans for my business. But I know this will change over time as they get older. The other thing that I loved hearing from Justine was a really clear definition of the different roles that financial professionals may play in our business. I think understanding the different roles these people take is so important, and how it's not always that you just need an accountant. Sometimes there's other people who can play an important role in a way that makes it more achievable financially for you. Please make sure to reach out to Justine if you would like to learn more about the financial foundations of your business. She is such a wealth of knowledge and is just a great human, and I know would love to help you all out. I hope you enjoyed this dialogue with Justine, and I will see you next week for our next design dialogue. Want to simplify the way you run your design studio? Learn how to organize your day, your desk, and your studio with more time to design. A cloud-based studio and project management platform built by an interior designer for interior designers. Make sure to book in a demonstration or start your free 30-day trial today. Follow the links in our show notes or head over to the More Time to Design website. Thank you for listening to this design dialogue. I hope you have found it full of inspiration and helpful information to take into your design studio. If you like the podcast and want to hear more, consider sharing it or writing a review, as it helps us reach more people, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to unlock the power of effortless studio management and elevate your design business to new heights, please follow the links in our show notes to see how More Time to Design can help you build a better business. Have a great week, and I will see you for our next design dialogue.